Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to episode 33, I think, of the ESG Show. Today we're talking about ESG and ISO standards. And I thought I'd kick off by talking about a status I saw on LinkedIn the other day from Nissa Jetha. And she said, we see ISO international standards support the three pillars of sustainable development that enable ESG integration, negative screening, as well as aligned to the UN SDGs. I use them to negative screen and benchmark portfolios. Nice to see the industry moving to alignment with the UN framing as well. And how does this work? Economic sustainability is promoted by facilitating international trade and supporting sustainable business practices. Quality infrastructure is also improved, contributing to government policy objectives in areas including industrial development, trade, competitiveness, efficient use of natural and human resources, food safety, health, the environment, and climate change. B, social sustainability is promoted by improving the health and well-being of citizens. ISO international standards cover all aspects of social welfare, from healthcare systems to social inclusion and accessibility. And finally, environmental sustainability is promoted by helping businesses manage their environmental impact. ISO international standards cover such aspects as implementing an environmental and management system, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, energy consumption, and encouraging responsible consumption. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get into the nuts and bolts somewhat and really try to drill down and go through some of the ISO standards. For example, ISO 9001, which is a quality management system. ISO 14001, environmental management system. ISO 45001, occupational health and safety management system. ISO 2001, information security management system. ISO 22301, business continuity management system. ISO 5001, energy management system. And ISO 14064. Okay, so I think that's enough from me. I think I'm going to pass the baton on now. I'm a little bit out of my depth on this one, but fortunately we've got some very, very good guests with us this morning. Just need to forewarn you, I've got two dogs in my vicinity this morning. So if you suddenly hear a bit of barking, please forgive me. And at the same time, if I suddenly look very, very stern, I'm not looking sternly at you. I'm looking sternly at the dogs, trying to stop them from barking. But anyhow, let's introduce the guests. And on the show this morning is Steve Stobo. Hello, Steve. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks, Michael. I too am in that same staring at the dog angrily if he starts barking. So you'll have to forgive me if my dog decides to join in the conversation today.
Maybe you should broadcast future edition to the ESG show from the Battersea Dogs Home or something. I thought. Okay, so Steve is the founder of CCS, a leading ISO consultancy, cybersecurity and third-party risk management services and solutions provider. CCS helps organizations of any size improve their businesses, manage their risks, and improve their security. As stakeholders, including investors, customers, employees, regulators, place greater, let's just pull Steve up. As stakeholders, including investors, customers, employees, and regulators, place greater emphasis on ESG factors, Steve helps organizations implement key ISO standards. I'm not going to read all the standards, Steve. We can talk about them in a minute, to help them enhancing their ESG performance. So, Steve, can you tell me a little bit about what CCS does?
I suppose from a ISO perspective, we're there to try and make businesses adopt ISO standards seamlessly and easily. We've got a very sort of slick 5-step process that helps businesses become ISO compliant and also then have the support for the ongoing management of their ISO systems. And like you said, there are, I know we're only talking about a few ISO standards, but there are nearly 24,000 of them covering all aspects of business, industry, manufacturing, service industry, etc. So obviously, we'd be here a long, long while, Michael, if we were talking about all of those.
All right. Well, don't do that. Okay. So Steve. Okay. So why are ISO standards so important?
I think there's quite a few reasons why they're really important. The first one, it gives assurances, because ISO standards provide the specifications for both, for products, services, systems, ensuring that they meet a certain quality, safety, or efficiency requirements. And that really helps build customer confidence and satisfaction. Obviously, it's a global standard. So whatever you do in the UK, if you're a multinational, you can adopt ISO standards across the globe, which means that businesses globally can start to work in the same way. They can operate more seamlessly in global markets. And again, their products and processes all adhere to the same standards. Part of the ISO is also risk management. It's looking at the risks and establishing best practices and also guidelines for the processes that govern them. This includes, there's obviously risk management standards like ISO 31000, for managing risks effectively. But I suppose what we'll go into a little bit more depth later on is talking around how it helps with innovation and sustainability. Because obviously you've got ISO 14001, which is for environmental management, and 50001 for the energy management. And these can lead to more efficient resource use and reduced environmental impact. And then you've got legal and regulatory compliance. But I think one of the key ones is enhanced reputation, because I know we did a talk a few weeks back around greenwashing and businesses pretending that they're trying to help the environment and being environmentally aware, but they don't have any standards or proof that they're actually doing it. And the consumers, I think, are getting more savvy about wanting to work with organizations that prove they're helping the environment as one element or helping the social impact.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it's interesting you're saying about how they're important for risk management. And I think a lot of critics will look at ISO standards as just being annoying and a nuisance. But actually they're there, that they actually support businesses. They actually help businesses run more effectively in the long term, I think. Can you tell me a little bit about what ISO on the meeting point between ISO and ESG? How do these things overlap?
I think they overlap in quite a few different areas. Obviously, there's the main area, I think, is just having a structured framework for implementing best practices in a business or an operation. And that's making sure people have got clear guidelines and processes. Everyone knows what their sort of requirements are, and that companies have got a really robust management system to address environmental issues, social, and also obviously bring in governance and make sure they can manage and address those effectively. And I think that's obviously, there's around credibility and trust, there's risk management, there's stakeholder confidence, there's competitive advantage, which all play a certain element around ESG. But I think having that framework and a structured framework with an ISO standard can really help businesses strive towards improving and getting better at ESG.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Steve, if you could join us again in a few minutes, I'm going to introduce our next guest now. Praveen, where are you? Where have you gone? There you are. Hello, Praveen. How are you? And whereabouts in the world are you ringing from today?
So, hi, Michael. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. I am from the nice city of Delhi, which is in India. So it is the evening time here, and the sun is going side. So yes, it is a good evening here, I'll say.
Okay. And I can hear the sound of Indian traffic in the background. So so Praveen Bansal, I hope I've said that correctly, has over 19 plus years of dedicated experience in environment, health, safety and sustainability in various sectors, including chemical, API manufacturing, automobile and heavy engineering. He's implemented ISO 14001, 45001 and 5001 in many organizations. He's a postgraduate from India's Best Education Institute, IIT. He's a certified lead auditor of ISO 5001, 45001, 14001 and 14064, and currently works as a Regional Director, EHS Sustainability in USMNC. So it's nice to have you here, Praveen. So you're an environmental engineer by background, I think. I'm very interested in your on the environmental engineering in India right now. Do you have any sort of comments about that? How things doing over there at the moment?
So Michael, when we talk about this environmental engineering, so okay, we talk about the engineering. So to solve problem, increase efficiency, improve the system. This is the meaning of engineering, if I talk about. And when we talk about the environment engineering, so environment cover all topic, whether air pollution, or the water pollution, or the solid waste management. So like air pollution control engineering, which cover the back filter, or maybe the scrubber, maybe the EPC, all cover there. Similarly, the water management system. So aerobic, anaerobic. So it is covering all the things. And yes, India, it is thriving, I would say. India, it is thriving. When I joined this IIT in 2003, so environment engineering not very prominent. Very few industry was in demand of this environment engineering, those who are having the highly pollution industry, maybe chemical, oil and gas, or cement industry. But with demand of sustainability in ESG, yes, it is thriving, I would say. So it is on high demand as of now.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about ISO certification in the context of India. I want to know. I mean, I'm assuming that the similarities with the UK and the rest of the world are it's more similar than it is different. There must be unique aspects to it in India. I'm interested to know about that, or maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just the same.
So ISO, what I know about this one, because I have visited many countries as well, so I do not find anything different in India as well. In India, like once 9001 came into picture back to 1987, if I'm not wrong, and India also started implementing, most of the organization started working on this one. At that time, it was very prestigious to having this 9001, and it was very rigor as well. But with over period of time, 14,001 came, then 18,001 was there, OSHA's, then 45,001 came. Now, most of the industry having this ISO 9001, 14,001, 50,001, even it is coming nowadays. And having this ISO standard means you are connected with international standard, and you are getting confidence in customer is getting confidence in you as well. So a lot of advantage of having this one. So ISO in India having long journey, and yes, as new standards are coming, so industry are not leaving any standard to implement, they are getting advantage, I believe.
Okay, thank you for that, Praveen. Well, if you could join us again shortly, I'm going to introduce our third guest now, Philip. Hello, Philip. How
Hi,
are
Michael.
You
I'm grand. Thank you very much.
Whereabouts in the world are you today?
I'm based in Guildford in Surrey.
Oh, okay. That's not that far from me. You're probably only about 25, 30 miles from me, I think. Philip is the Chief Operating Officer at whatimpact.com, supporting UK organisations to deliver impactful sustainability programmes via VCSE partnerships in the UK. He had 9 years. He was a lead implementer for ISO 14001, ISO 27001, EcoFardis and CDB programs. He also had a marketing manager as a conservation role for Coral K Conservation. That was back in 2001. Oh, it was a long time ago now.
That's where it all started.
Back when I wasn't even that old. So anyway, great to have you on the show today, Philip. Can you tell us a little bit about what whatimpact.com is all about?
Bit of a tongue twister, I have to say, Michael, but you managed it well. So What Impact helps companies achieve the delivery of the S of ESG in a nutshell, the social, particularly for organizations that are needing to deliver social value to public sector organizations, which is becoming more and more prominent within the UK. The way in which we do that is we provide a social value brokerage platform so that organizations requiring to deliver social value that may not have the capability or resources to do it themselves, to matchmake with charities or social enterprise organizations within the UK to deliver tangible social value on the ground within specific geographic locations in the UK, and then have that that social impact validated by a reporting mechanism that reduces kind of the idea of social or greenwashing.
Okay, thank you. And can you give me your take on the importance of ISO in the context of ESG?
Good question. So I think from my perspective, having worked in ISO for many years, as you mentioned, I think they both have the shared objectives of promoting sustainability, ethical business practices, responsible corporate governance, and that they all have the requirement to be socially responsible, environmentally sustainable, and ethically sound. However, I think where there might be some differentiation, as we would expect, ESG provides a broader framework for evaluating a company's performance, whereas ISO standards have specific guidelines, requirements, and controls for the implementation of best practices to achieve them.
Okay, and so you spent 9 years implementing ISO standards. That's rather a long time.
It is.
That sounds like it was challenging, was it? So how did that go?
Yeah. How did it all go? Well, in 3 words: challenging and rewarding. When I began my career in ISO, my organization had just recently achieved ISO 27001, but it had been outsourced to a consultant. And I was asked to take over the program because of my operational background. And the first thing that I did when I looked at all of the briefing packs, the huge amount of paperwork to read through, was to try and get a better understanding. So I put myself on a course. I became certified as a lead implementer and an internal auditor. So I was both gamekeeper and poacher, so to speak, so I could understand both sides of how it all went. What you're dealing with when working or implementing ISO standards within an organization is really about either bolstering activity that's already happening or implementing organizational change to adhere to the requirements of ISO. So that means you're going to be working with pretty much every department, every member of staff within your organization to align them to what you're looking to implement, whichever standard it might be.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Now we're going to be turning to that part of the show when we review media stories, and we're going to kick off with one that Steve spotted in the Guardian. UK at risk of summer water shortage. Oh, let's start that one again. UK at risk of summer water shortages and hose pipe bans, scientists warn, which I must say is a bit of a wind-up, that story, because the weather's been absolutely rotten here recently. So, Steve, can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, it just sort of caught my eye around, another potential hosepipe ban happening this year, when I've not even been on my motorbike at all this year. It's been locked up since October last year because I don't ride in the rain. And I just thought it highlights the need for businesses to look at how they manage water. Obviously, everybody likes to blame the water companies because we hear all the stories in the newspapers, fluids leaked into rivers, infecting the environment. But also, I think it's the responsibility of every business to look at how they can manage water, how they can manage pollution, and obviously avoid pollution, how they can conserve water, and obviously ISO standards like 9001, making sure processes are all done correctly and resources are used correctly. But more importantly, probably 14001, looking at where you can implement water saving measures and start working towards more sustainable water management practices. But everyone likes to bash the water companies, and I thought some of the other speakers on the show might want to bash them too, or may want to offer a different perspective. But I don't believe in bashing people.
All right, as long as we don't bash hosts of the ESG show, everything's fine. Okay, so Philip, you spotted a piece on, let's just call it up, ESG and social value reflections from Social Value UK, and this was on a website called socialvalue.org. Can you tell us more?
So yeah, it's really a discussion point between the understanding of what ESG is and social value. Are there differences? Are there contrasts? Do we need them both? Are they the same thing? Are they not? And the consensus on the article is that both are needed, but they are nuanced in differences. And it really comes down to the scope and the focus of what these two topics consider. So when you're thinking about ESG, environmental, social governance, the scope is generally a broader range of factors that measure a company's sustainability and ethical impact, and its focus primarily on assessing how a company manages the risks and the opportunities related to those topics. Whereas in social value, it's specifically focusing on the positive impact that an organization creates for the society and the communities external to its actual kind of organization itself that it can deliver. The social value emphasizes the tangible benefits that a company can provide to all of its stakeholders, employees, but mostly the external communities that it offers its products and services in. So you can't necessarily have one without the other.
Okay, thanks for that, Philip. And then finally, we've got, I'm going to, hang on just a second while I pull it up. We've got this article from the India Spend, and Praveen, you spotted this piece. Over half of Delhi's garbage ends up in landfills. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, Michael, it's alarming, undoubtedly. The picture itself is very alarming, which we can see here. And it is one of the major problem, I would say, in Delhi, not in the Delhi, but other part of country as well. Apart from major problem, which we all know, the air pollution, which is Delhi suffering, especially in the November, December month, where the winter is there. And this waste problem is very long. And what is happening that every month, every day, approximate 11,000 tons are being added into this category, and half is obviously being recycled and desegregated. Sorry, but half is reaching to landfill site. So day by day, inch by inch, the height of this mountain is increasing. But not only here, this is not only land pollution, but it is contributing to air pollution, because obviously this degradation happening. So this lot of gases are getting generated, and this when the raining is happening, so it is converted to the air, land pollution and the water pollution as well. The problem is this is very long problem which is coming out, and government and technology is working together, I would say, in this one to find out the solution. But what Steve mentioned, same apply here as well. All the time we cannot tell to government to work on this. It is individual responsibility as well to take care of this one, because this activity has to be started from home only. The waste segregation should be started from home. Though we have started, like in India, if you find many cities, especially let's say if I talk about Indore and Pune, they are one of the major cities in India, and they are one of the cleanest city. They have adopted waste segregation from their home, and then collection part, then government also working, administration is also working. So same methodology has to be adopted in the other cities, and then obviously I would say behavior has to be changed from the home, and yes, we have to change the system. Little by little things are changing, and I believe with the technology, with this incinerator method where waste will be burned so that energy can be used and waste also can be reduced, the things will improve.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we're gonna get to the meat of today's show, and we're going to talk about various ISO standards. And initially, Steve, I wanted to talk to you about this particular standard, 9001 Quality Management System.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about what this is? What's this one then?
It's a quality management system. It's one that CCS have actually adopted ourselves, and we adopted it for a variety of different reasons, because the standard helps us meet customer needs, helps us improve how we operate as an organization, and helps us also continually improve our processes and how we actually manage the business. And it gives us almost like a blueprint or a guidebook of how we should operate as a business, but all the time emphasizing quality within it. And it's applicable to any industry, any size organization, literally from a one-man band working in his kitchen all the way up to the largest of global companies. And it's about having a management system in place that addresses the quality of the products and services that you actually deliver to customers.
Okay, thanks. And how does adherence to this ISO 9001 principles contribute to enhancing stakeholder trust and satisfaction, and aligning that with ESG goals? How does that all work?
I think because it builds on quality, consistency, and customer focus, it means that you've got really good management system in place, which then demonstrates to stakeholders, whether that's investors, the employees themselves, people owe you money if you're in that situation where you need to get, and it builds trust. And it also enables businesses really to enhance their own products and their services quality. And it's all about continual improvement. You probably hear me say continual improvement a lot during all the ISO standards. That's one of the key areas around it. It's not just a sort of one-stop, let's get ISO, put it in a cupboard and forget about it. It's about, as Phil was mentioning, talking about the auditing process, managing and looking and reviewing the processes and looking for ways you can improve. And it aligns nicely with ESG goals around, stakeholder engagement, satisfaction and trust, but also emphasizes accountability and transparency. And I think what's equally as important, real ethical business practices.
Okay. And can you explain how implementing ISO 9001 standards help organizations minimize waste and optimize resource utilization? Therefore promoting sustainability.
Yeah, I think if you talk about, environmental sustainability, most people don't think of ISO 9001 as helping the environment, but it's very, very wrong. It really does, because it involves streamlining processes and optimizing the amount of resources you use. And it also focuses on waste reduction, which obviously leads to environmental benefits. It helps you minimize the resources you use, which leads to better energy usage and less waste being generated. From, obviously, we saw the news story a few minutes ago, and promotes that sort of environmental sustainability within the ESG framework. And that could be for businesses then adopting things like lean manufacturing or better, greener procurement practices. And obviously, as I keep saying, continuous improvement for managing resources more effectively. And I think all of that can really help organizations minimize their waste, optimize their resource, and be more sustainable.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we're going to turn to the next one, ISO 14001, Environmental Management System. And Philip, I'm going to hand over to you at this point. Can you talk a little bit about this one?
So ISO 14001 Environmental Management System, or abbreviated to EMS, is probably the ISO standard that's most commonly associated or understood to be associated with ESG. It's environmental management. It's a framework for organizations to manage their environmental responsibilities that impact both internal within the physical location of an organization or externally to the environment that they are providing products and services. So it's not just about manufacturers who are actually building a product and then shipping it out to the world, to their consumers. It can be even those that are providing services that don't actually have a physical output. But all of these things will have some kind of environmental impact, and this is what an environmental management system will allow you to manage. The certification itself, it demonstrates an organization's commitment and operational compliance to the scope of the EMS. And when we talk about scope, it's the foundation, it's the fundamental remit of an organization's EMS. So an organization will set a scope to say, this is what we are going to do in terms of the ISO that we're talking about, in this case 14001, and the rest of the EMS explains how the policies, the procedures of how that will be implemented. So in terms of EMS, one of the fundamentals is obviously in the UK or any other country is going to be compliance with environmental regulations. So within your EMS, you would have identified the environmental regulations at a minimum that you have to adhere to and how you're going to do it. But then you might set objectives outside of that as well, reducing your waste, making sure that you're doing recycling, energy consumption, recycling, the things that kind of Steve alluded to as well. And the reasons why organizations might want to adopt 14001 is to reduce the fines that are associated with negatively impacting on or not achieving environmental regulations. So you're going to run the risk of fines and penalties and reputational damage. Implementing 14001 will mitigate and reduce that risk.
Okay, thank you for that, Philip. Now, how does ISO 14001 certification assist companies in identifying and mitigating environmental risks, demonstrating their commitment to environmental stewardship within the ESG context? So how does it assist companies in identifying and mitigating environmental risks?
Well, as Steve mentioned, all ISO programs, or as many as I've ever worked on, they start off, they're a risk-based framework. So it has a company, you have to look at the scenarios where you're looking at how you operate as a business, identifying all of the scenarios that are relevant to the ISO standard that you're working with that may negatively impact in 14001 on the environment. So having identified those risks, you look to put policies, practices and procedures in place to kind of reduce that risk. And then in terms of kind of the output of that, once you've got the system in place and it's operational, you'll be able to demonstrate to the outside world and to your internal stakeholders, or all of them all together, how you're adhering.
Okay, so Praveen and Steve, on the issue of 14001 helping organisation achieve cost savings through resource efficiency and waste reduction, do you have anything to add?
14001, when we talk about, rightly mentioned by Steve and Philip, this it is very much applicable and very much linked to ESG part, because the ESG talk about the E part, the environment part, and energy. We are talking about this one, and 14001 play major role in the risk mitigation. So the good part which has been done, the 14001, when earlier edition the context of organization was not there. With the recent edition, which is 2015, this context of organization has been added there, and it has been asked to stakeholder to find out the internal and external stakeholder, and plus to identify what are the need and expectation on this way. So this is how the company able to identify what is actually my risk is associated with this every stakeholder, what is the need expectation, and plus what opportunity I'm looking for also. This is also a good thing which was added, the new addition, what Philip mentioned apart from this one. And plus obviously the leadership, when it is coming there, so leadership commitment, their role responsibility, they have to define it, because they all management system work from the top to bottom approach. So where the leadership is coming forward and they have to take responsibility to implement the requirement. So yes, 14001 is very much linked to ESG, and it is the one of the major ISO standard which is helping actually ESG implementation.
Okay, thank you for that. And Steve, anything to add?
Yeah, I think Philip covered it really well about all the ISO standards, looking at risks and how you can actually address them. But if you look at some of the mitigation strategies that you could do by adopting a standard like ISO 14001, is implementing those sort of preventive measures. And that might be simple as containment systems to prevent spills, or making sure you've got regular maintenance schedules for equipment, which is likely to break down, or just have better training to educate employees around best practice of environmental stewardship. Also, it's about having a plan if things do go wrong from the risks that you've identified, and creating an emergency response plan, again, is another area for ISO 14001. You know, what do you need to do if you have a spill or a leak or some other emergency? What are the protocols for containment or cleanup? And also, how do you then communicate that to relevant stakeholders? And those stakeholders might be industries that you have to adhere to around pollution, if you're handling hazardous chemicals, for instance. But as Phil mentioned earlier, it's not just for those manufacturing companies that are dealing with, you know, chemicals or anodizing materials or manufacturing. It can be any business can actually do that, because any business can invest in technology and infrastructure to try and, again, reduce, you know, pollution control equipment, updating to more environmentally friendly machinery, for instance, you know, uses less energy, becomes better for the environment, or just automatic monitoring systems that if they do detect there's been a leak or a hazard or whatever in the business that could have an environmental impact, that can be done in real time. But one of the other key areas, which have been mentioned a couple of times, is those regular audits and inspections, making sure that the processes and procedures and however you're working as a business, that you are looking to improve and then take the necessary corrective action to mitigate the risks that you've actually identified.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, we've had a bit of a, normally when we do the ESG show, comments automatically appear on my screen so I can show them. But for some reason, that's not working today. We've had a couple of comments. We had a comment from Charles who said this is good. Thank you for that, Charles. Please keep making comments like that. Abid said, a great platform to share knowledge. Different MNPs are already adopting ESG sustainability in their business operations, apart from implementing ISO standards, which is great at ensuring customer satisfaction, seamless business operations, and adding value to society. And Katrina Clullo made a comment raving about how good you are, Steve. So you'll be pleased to know about that. Now, still on the subject of this particular standard, 14,001. Is it 14,001? Have I raced ahead of the game? 14,001. Philip, I'm interested in. I'm interested in just if you could just hold me because I've lost my place. I think we've covered 14,001 in fact. I think we have. So we'll move on. So apologies for that. I got a bit lost. We're now going to turn to 45,001. And who is our volunteer to talk about that? Steve, can you tell us about 45,001?
Yeah, sure. ISO 45,001 is a occupational health and safety management system. Again, in the same way as 9,001 and 14,001, but it's specifically designed for workplace health and safety to prevent injury, illness, promote well-being and a positive safety. And that's again through hazard identification or risk and putting in the necessary controls and processes and procedures in place to mitigate them as much as possible.
Okay, thank you for that. And still on the subject of 45,001, how does the ISO 45,001 certification support companies in ensuring health, safety and well-being of their employees, and then, you know, turn aligning with their ESG considerations?
Yeah, I think it really demonstrates a commitment to protecting the employees' health, safety and well-being, which obviously aligns with the social aspect of ESG. And it involves, you know, identify the hazards, assess the risks and put in the right controls, but also the right monitoring in place. And it covers areas such as making sure people are trained on manual handling, how to work machinery safely, make sure they've got the right PPE equipment on, that they're protected at all times. But it's not just about physical injury. It also covers aspects around mental health, around bullying or anti-bullying within an organization, which can also then contribute to the S and the sort of social element of it.
Okay, and I suppose this is still with the S bit. Workplace accidents and injuries resulting, you know, if you can reduce accidents and injuries, you improve employee productivity and morale, which of course is good for the bottom line. How does ISO 45001 tie in with that?
Yeah, again, it really helps them. What are your risks within the business that could potentially injure or affect even the simplest thing is the morale of your employees? Nobody wants to work in a high risk industry where you actually feel you are at risk and your business is not actually looking after your social well-being there. It makes sure all the controls are in there to prevent the accidents and injuries happening in the first place, to make sure that the employee's well-being is always at the forefront of it. It also helps employees in their overall health and safety, which leads to a decrease in people being off from lost work days. It means that people are happy to go to work because they know that their employees or employers, sorry, are actually looking after their best interests at heart, and improves their morale, which means people have better job satisfaction, less likely to leave the business, and has a real positive work environment. And it also fosters teamwork and collaboration. Part of ISO 45001 is to involve their employees in the health and safety of the overall business. And that really sort of addresses the sort of social element within ESG. But then obviously we're just talking about employees being injured, but there are significant benefits and value around it for the business as well. You know, reduced insurance costs, less absenteeism, less costs in terms of rehiring staff, as well as potential fines and or criminal proceedings against businesses for not adhering to it, which all have a knock-on effect to the social element and obviously the S in ESG.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. By the way, Philip and Praveen, please, if you have anything to add, just interrupt. But I thought we'd turn to ISO 27001 now. And Philip, I'm going to ask you to explain this one.
Okay, probably one of the, again, in my opinion, one of the better known ISO standards. ISO 27001 is the standard for information security management systems, or ISMS for short. Essentially, it's a framework that an organization can implement to protect their data. And that data may be of any nature. It might be electronic, it might be physical, it might be imagery, it might be people. It's a collation of all of that. So you're looking at reducing or identifying and reducing risks to that data and protecting that information to ensure that only those required to be able to access it can do so. In terms of ESG, probably not the best associated ISO standard, but it does have some connections in terms of environmental. In order to protect an organization's data, you have to look to minimize environmental threats to a physical premises, for example, ensuring that its building is weather tight, whether the electrical supply has been tested and is going to continuously provide electricity to an office, that you've got security, physical access security systems in place. In terms of digital transformation, ISO 27001 encourages a paperless environment, for example. So therefore, you're consuming less paper, you're having to do less waste management, and also it encourages energy efficiency as well. So it's not 14,001, but the way that 27,001 might do it is if you are off-siting your servers to an external environment, that gives you the opportunity to kind of review how your server environment can be scalable, but also reducing the environmental impact by outsourcing it to a company that specializes in that. In terms of social, the S of social, 27,001, again, it's a bit nuanced, but it's all about the transparency, explaining to people what you're doing to protect their data. So especially for customers, you're explaining to them, that your data does matter to us. So when you see these messages on websites, when you're entering your personal information, organizations will say we care for you, but ISO 27001 can provide that additional endorsement and trust to a customer or one of the other types of stakeholders, investors, staff even, that you really have a commitment to protect their data. And then finally, the G of ESG in terms of ISO 27001, well, again, it's this risk-based approach. You're implementing a framework that is documented, it's assessed, it's audited, it's certified. And so all those governing factors remain there as they do for all of the other ISO standards.
Okay, so listening to you there, I'm kind of thinking of GDPR. There must be a massive overlap between this standard and GDPR, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
So if you're complying with GDPR, then you're kind of by default, you're meeting the standards of this standard.
No, 27001 is much broader. I mean, GDPR is a lot about personal data as well, and I'm not a GDPR expert per se, but ISO 27001 is much broader because you're looking at all types of data. It could be commercially sensitive information, it could be client sensitive data, but it's also the protection of the physical environment as well, which GDPR is not associated with.
Okay, thank you for that. Steve, anything to add?
No, that was really comprehensive. The only thing I'd probably add is around a little bit more around the S for sort of social, because obviously implementing ISO 27001, and that is my business's, that's probably one of the standards that we implement the most for organizations, ranging from 10,000 employee companies down to two-man bands. But from an ESG point of view, what I've seen from a sort of social aspect is the impact that a data breach can have on not only the individual, but the organization and also the wider community as a whole from data breaches, loss of privacy. And it's all around that, protection of sensitive information, data and privacy. And if that is leaked, it can have devastating effects from a social point of view to the individual's data that's leaked. Or if you're the victim of a phishing attack or a malware attack, for instance, which part of the 27001 controls is to make sure that you have processes, procedures, and also technology to a certain degree in place to protect the privacy and the data. And that can have a sort of quite a serious social impact.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. Now, just to reiterate what I was saying just now, normally comments automatically appear and I can show them on the screen. And for some reason beyond my brain, this isn't happening today. But we've had a few comments. We've had a comment from MD Sahanjir from Bangladesh. Nice to hear from you. Nice to get someone dialing in from Bangladesh. Wonderful sharing. And he says, underdeveloped and ongoing countries, organizations still are utilizing the ISO certification as branding, only by the opportunity of lower governance by local government agencies. Now, how this certification bodies can emphasize the real value of the standards, especially in operational control and measurements with integrity. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but if you do, please speak.
That's quite a difficult one to sort of answer. I think once for the integrity of the standard is to have that independent certification. What you don't want is whoever implements the standard for you to then certify that you are working to that standard. And that's why within the ISO frameworks, I can talk about the UK and the wider market, there are a variety of different ways to certify, to validate independently that you are operating to the ISO framework and the ISO standard. In the UK, that's typically either via an independent ISO certification company or via UCAS. In the US, for instance, it might be ANAB, and then there's another one that's for Asia and Asia Pac, and one for Australia, and there's actually a couple for the US. And then there's an overall governing body of IAF. So where businesses or companies want to make sure that whoever's saying they are ISO certified is actually ISO certified, there are methods and ways to actually prove their credentials. But I think the industry has kind of clamped down on the practice of businesses printing off a certificate, and that really goes against the whole principles of ISO. It's around having an independent verification that you are working to a standard. And I think that gets around a lot of the credibility of the ISO standards. And because it's international, it's applicable everywhere.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we need to push on and talk about the next ISO standard, which I think is 22,301, which I'm about to call up. And Steve, one for you to explain what this one's all about.
Yeah, this is, again, not a very well-known one, particularly. It's really focused around business continuity management system. Now, a business continuity management system, again, is a framework, like we've been talking frameworks a lot today, where businesses, through risk assessments, can identify threats to their operation. And that can be a minor incident through to a major disaster. And a minor incident might be losing a laptop, for instance, and a major disaster might be an environmental disaster or a complete loss of sight. And what they need to do is make sure they have a plan to address, to make sure the critical functions within the business are not disrupted. And ISO 22301 builds a framework to enable a business to actually do that.
Okay, I don't want to spend much more time on this one because we are running over. But perhaps you could just talk about how 22,301 helps organisations minimise the impact of disruptions on.
Yeah, I think if you look at it from the social element of it, it's protecting employees' livelihoods to make sure that they can continue to work, because the business has a ISO 22301 in place to be able to continue to operate in the event of minor incident through to major disaster. And that really demonstrates a commitment to social responsibility for organisations that have adopted it, and that aligns with the ESG framework. And as well as, I think, Phil but the other guests have all mentioned, it's about building trust and credibility, that they are prioritising the well-being and continuity of being able to deliver service.
Okay.
I was going to say, just in addition to what Steve's saying, if an organisation is providing essential products and services to communities, whatever they might be, it's essential for those communities to receive those products and services, because they might be health related, for example. And if an organisation suffers from a scenario where it has a breakdown in its ability to provide those products and services, the community is going to feel the negative impact of that. So having a continuity scenario based on an ISO will prevent or mitigate that risk.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So even this business continuity management system, it was very useful during the COVID time. Those who have implemented, they could continue this as a business for the supply chain, because a lot of supply chain and value chain got suffered because of this discontinuity of the observation. So those who have implemented business continuity management systems, it was very useful. So even this system gives you opportunity to identify such kind of scenario which may occur maybe once in 100 year or 10 year, so that your continuity should be there and your business should not be suffered. Like Philip, what we mentioned, if you're supplying something which is essential but something for you as well, so your production should not get suffered. So it is very useful, I would say. So risk assessment is very much needed to identify what is the essential product for you or the raw material for you, so that your business should not be suffered.
Okay, thanks for that. We've had another comment, not a question, just a comment, but I thought I'd read it out from Abid. Great platform to share knowledge. Different MNCs are already adopting ESG sustainability in their business operations, apart from implementing ISO standards, which is great at ensuring customer satisfaction, seamless business operations, and adding value to society. And Abid, just like the previous question I read out, is also from Bangladesh. So we're obviously doing well in Bangladesh today, which is great to hear. Now, next one is ISO 5001. And Praveen, I'm going to hand over to you at this point to to talk a little bit about what this one's about?
Yeah, Michael. So this is also not very old management system, and unlike ISO 14001, 45001, the companies or industry are very much familiar of this one. Even these 14 and 45 being implemented not only to the manufacturing unit, but to the medical institute and the educational institute as well. But if I talk about 50,001, it is comparatively new and energy management system, which is helping company to reduce energy and efficiency as well. Though there is a one myth which companies need to understand, it helps to reduce the greenhouse gases, but not vice versa. Let's say if you are reducing greenhouse gases, it does not mean you are implementing 50,001, because 50,001 help you to reduce the energy reduction and the conservation as well. Even this management system support the SDG 7 as well, which is affordable, green and clean energy for everyone. So the beauty of this management system is like they are linked to either of this SDG goal. Like this one, as I mentioned, it is linked to goal number 7, this one. And objective, as we know, to conservation and this energy efficiency. So companies are getting a lot of benefit after implementing this one. And especially in India, if I talk about 14 and 45, every company having now, and 50,000 is new one trend, because after implementing this one, they are moving towards ESG implementation. Because ESG, when we talk about, the major part is coming of environment, and environment means energy. So this ISO management system help towards achieving ESG goals. And not only this one, this management system also helping you to assurance part as well, because when you are implementing this one, it is giving you launching pad, a company like to implement ESG requirement framework, whatever it is. So assurance part also being covered in this management system. So this is how companies are getting benefit by after implementing this system.
Okay, thanks for that. And Steve, anything to add on the topic of ISO 5001?
Yeah, I think it's one of these sort of standards. We're seeing it more, especially in the UK, with larger organisations wanting to adopt 50,001. And I think it's the impact of the energy crisis, rising bills. Businesses are looking for ways that they can save money, but at the same time prove their credentials in a green market, that they are, they're trying to reduce their energy consumption, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, which align with the sustainability objectives of the ESG framework. And because when you get certified by a certification body after implementing a management system, and we've implemented these management systems before, it's around making sure that you can identify what energy you're actually using, set the objectives on how you actually want to reduce it, and then implement energy saving measures, and make sure, most importantly, that you are monitoring the performance of that to make sure that you are getting the value and the benefits and the savings that go along with it.
Okay, thank you. We've just got one more standard to discuss, and then we'll be rounding up with some couple of sort of general questions. Praveen, ISO 14064. Can you tell us a little about this?
Yeah, Michael. So this system is very much different from other system, which is 14,000 and 45,001. This does not follow the requirement of PDCA, which is the Plan to Check Act. It is actually reported and data verification, which help every company now going towards for the greenhouse gas reduction, obviously. So this management system is helping quantification and reporting of GHG emission and removal. And it is not alone, it having complete family. So this 14064 having family part 1, part 2, part 3. So part 1 is applicable to the organization which is already implemented GHG project, anything which has already implemented and results are started coming. And part 2 is talk about the project, means which the project which you are going to implement, then the result will come in the future. So a lot of assumption is applicable to this one when the part 2 is being implemented. And the one of the best part about this management system, it is GHG program free, neutral. So what does it mean? Neutral means you can adopt any GHG program which is GHG protocol or it could be the DEFRA, which is being used in UK, or this GHG reporting program, which is used in US. So any reporting program can be used for this one protocol program. And because this 14064 is basically for monitoring and quantification reporting management system. So you implement any program for GHG, it will report and audit. So this is helping a lot. And as we like GRI having their own principle, TCFD having their own principle. Similarly, this 14064 having also principle of relevance, accuracy, completeness, consistency, which is also helping industry or an organization to adopt the system, and like uniformity coming, I would say, in this way, it everywhere. And yes, this management system is new, but helping a lot to industry. It is not certified management system. Okay, so like you will not get certificate once you achieve this one. This is only monitoring, reporting, and quantification. So verification and validation bodies are coming here to approve the things which you reported. Yes, it is as per the requirement, but yes, it is helping you to a lot for ESG goal and assurance part, like 50,001. So here also you are getting advantage of assurance part, because how it will be audited, verified, and validated by different bodies. So it is helping you, and it is new, but yes, companies are going for this one as well.
Okay, thank you for that. We've had another comment from Sherry Ann Bedminster. Thanks for this information session. ISSB has been established, consolidate standards and frameworks. Then we've got a question here. Will ISO look how it can build on these, or will it maintain a separate framework? So will ISO be separate from ISSB, or will it build on it? Any comments about that? Anyone with any thoughts?
So I believe these two are different bodies. When we talk about ISSB, so TCFD and SASB, they are included, or they are being supported now, ISSB, because now worldwide every organization, because of lot of challenges which is happening all around the world. There are a lot of management system or framework, I would say, which are coming out. So organization is in trouble, or they are confused which management system has to be implemented, framework standard has to be implemented. So that ISSB came forward with combination of all framework, and now it can be adopted worldwide. But if I talk about ISO, it is totally different body, and it is supporting in ESG. It is not directly linked with ESG, what we are discussing the last 1 hour, I would say. It is supporting, but yes, individual organization, maybe like let's say large organization or middle scale organization, they may go for the ESG, but sometimes what happens that small organization, they are not going for ESG, but they can adopt ISO standard. As I mentioned, this especially educational institute or medical institute, so they may not be adopting ESG, but ISO, they can go for this one. So both are different, but yeah, supporting to each other. But I'm not seeing that ISO will be merged with ISSB, because it is totally different one framework.
Okay, thank you for that. Look, I think we need to sort of round up now. I just wanted to have two very, very quick questions for you all, and I'd ask if you could answer super fast. What are the pitfalls of ISO certification? Steve, can you give me 45 seconds on the pitfalls?
Oh, pitfalls. I think there's 3 key ones. Businesses that focus on compliance and not improvement generally don't get the benefits from ISO certification, because maybe they've been mandated to get a client in. If they don't get senior management involved, that's a real red flag, because they need to be involved. And if implemented incorrect, it can stifle innovation, and processes are developed that don't work for the business. They need business experts to come in and help them develop the processes right. I see those as the 3 pitfalls. Okay,
Philip?
I would have to kind of agree with Steve. I mean, not having a green light from top management is a major consideration, and it's actually a requirement of ISO. You have to have top management or C-level, whomever they are, endorsing whichever ISO you're going for. That you've got to be careful about the scope of your ISO, what it is you're looking to achieve, with whichever standard. You've got to make it super tight so you understand and you can work within the framework, and resource. implementing ISO is going to take resource, and you've got to make sure you've got people on board to assist.
Okay, and Praveen, 45 seconds.
Yeah, so what Philip mentioned, the last point, that is very important. It is not the one function activity, it is the complete activity, the complete unit activity which has to be adopted. So proper role responsibility, if it is not defined, then it will be definitely disaster it is going to be. And in my experience, what also I have seen, to understand ISO standard is also very challenging sometimes. Different certification body having different own perception toward this one. So this is also one pitfall I have seen this one. But otherwise, to understand this one, it is good. And the leadership role, if leadership is not involved, you won't fulfill the purpose, the intention what you are going for ISO. ISO implementation is not only for getting the certificate, but actually getting the intent of this one, actually achieve the objective of this ISO.
Okay, thank you. And now I think we just round out one more very simple question for each of you. I'm going to ask you to try and make this one a 30-second answer. Can you give me a tip for implementing ISO? Steve, a tip.
Just one, or do you want a couple?
One.
Oh, right. Make sure, I think it's come down to that resource question, that make sure if you are seeking help from external organizations, that they are qualified IRCA consultant, International Register of Certified Auditors, that they are qualified consultants, and they're not just body shops sending you templates of pre-written processes for your business, or pointing you at frequently asked questions, because it will fail if it doesn't.
Okay, thank you. And Philip?
Do it for the right reasons and do your research. Sorry, that's two. Don't just do it because you want a certificate on the wall. Make sure that it's ingrained in the ethics and the ethos of your organization. And in terms of the research, spend a lot of time looking at what's out there. Speak to consultants, as Steve mentioned. Get your own understanding right first, and then have it confirmed by any research that you do. Okay,
thank you. And Praveen, the last word is with you.
Yes, so it would be, don't be in hurry. It takes time to get the maturity level. Generally, the industry organization want this, yes, I want everything in one go. No, it takes time. It having the cycle, surveillance audit, recertification audit, so it takes time. So don't be in hurry.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Steve, Praveen, and Philip. And no ESG show next week, but we're on the following week. See you then.